Hello everybody, in this video we're going to look at randomized experiments. So here we want to describe a design for a controlled experiment to test a new drug for treating the flu on mice. So we're going to use mice to test this new drug. How does randomization apply to your design? So the first thing that we need to look at is that we primarily have two groups. We have an experimental group and a controlled group, where the controlled group kind of is what we would use to test if the drug effect actually worked, because a controlled group would keep going on their day as normal while the experimental group would have the new drug, and so we could use that to compare. So in a sample controlled experiment, randomly assign mice to one of two groups. And here's the thing. Some experiments can have more than two groups, especially if they're testing multiple variables. So each variable that you introduce, you would probably want a group for that, so that you could rule out whether it's the drug or if it's this other variable you're introducing. Some experiments do not have a controlled group or just compare different treatments. So one group, the experimental group, typically receives the treatment, and the other group, the control group, does not. And when you're doing something like getting to the human experimental phase of this, typically that person will get a placebo so that they don't know if they have the new drug or not. Then we use statistics to compare the effects of the treatment to the effects of no treatment. And again, you have to look at all the variables being factored in. So you do want to keep variability low between both test groups so that you could definitely test and see the significant outputs of your experiment. So here, to design this new test drug, mice are assigned randomly to either the experimental group or the controlled group, and all mice are infected with the flu. So each mouse gets of the flu, the same version at the same time. The control group does not receive the drug, but the experimental group receives the new drug. The results are analyzed to see whether the new drug affects the progression of the flu in a way that is significantly different from receiving no treatment. So here we go with the significantly different. That means that we're going to see a drastic change between the experimental and the control, because there is still variability on how the mouse itself will react to the flu. And so some mice might actually get better in 5 days and some might get better in 7. But we want to see, does this drug even shorten that further to 3 days, and is that significantly different? And do we see that in a majority of the mice, at this 25% reduction in severity or longevity of the flu symptoms? So the random assignment to experimental and control groups should ensure that the differences between the two groups is due to the drug rather than other things like environment. So again, this is why we test these things on mice, because we can control their environment, we could control their diet, we can control their water intake, and so that we can definitely bring down the variables to one or two variables. So here you guys go. Here is a randomized experiment looking at drug effects. And basically that is it for this video. So if you have any questions or comments, always feel free to ask, and I will catch you in the next video.